In 2003, after the United States invaded Iraq, something the war planners probably weren't too happy about started to happen. Some Iraqi Shia, especially as sectarian violence escalated in the late 2000s, began to form their own militias, backed by Iran. These militias eventually became a force of their own within the Iraqi government. As Muhammad A. Saleh from FPRI puts it, these militias gain salaries and use resources from the Iraqi government directly. Their source of income isn't just the state, however. According to this article, they have their own illicit ways of making money. This situation, in essence, makes it quite difficult for Iraq's leader, the Prime Minister, to prevent them from launching their own attacks if they wanted to. And just as much of an issue from America's perspective, Iraq was becoming increasingly close to Iran.
Failure in Iraq would allow terrorists to operate from a safe haven with access to the world's third largest oil reserves.
The US, however, had its own card to play. The United States took control of Iraq's oil revenues. This means that the money Iraq makes from its oil industry first goes to New York and then goes to Baghdad. Given the fact that oil makes up over 90% of all of Iraq's exports, this meant that the US could exercise some serious influence over the nation. And not just that. Following the invasion, Bush and his colleagues also gave much more autonomy to the region of Iraqi Kurdistan. Over the next 2 decades, US presidents would continue to support the Kurds militarily and diplomatically, with the last US base in Iraq, as of now, being located in the region. And that takes us to today. By February 28th, 2026, you essentially had a country having the balance between American and Iranian influences while simultaneously having its own internal divisions. This is the Iraqi front. This is episode 4 of Iran, the War. Last episode saw the Lebanese front and the Israeli war effort against the Shia militia group Hezbollah. And that episode is in the description. As for Iraq, however, since nearly the beginning of the war, Iran sought to benefit from its relationship with the Iraqi militias to launch strikes against US military targets in the region. Within the state of Iraq itself, that meant attacking the US military base in the Kurdistan region. Reports then surfaced that the US and Israeli militaries were backing certain Kurdish groups to launch a ground incursion into Iran. A ground invasion would have made things much more difficult for the country by forcing it to engage in a ground war, a completely different game than the conflict of drones and airstrikes that the Iranians, Americans, and Israelis had all been playing. So not long afterwards, in the first week of March, Iran and its allies launched attacks against Kurdish targets in the north, as reported by this article.
وقال بارزاني أن مجموعة من العناصر الإرهابية تشن هجوماً على أربيل.
Strikes on the region continued for most of the conflict, as did US attacks on the militias. Ultimately, however, the invasion did not materialize. Back then, the increase of Iranian influence over Iraq caused fear in many of the Gulf states who felt that the government in Tehran could now threaten their borders directly. And that dynamic still exists. According to the Wall Street Journal, Iraqi Shia militias launched hundreds of strikes against their southern neighbor, Saudi Arabia, targeting strategic oil infrastructure in the nation. According to Reuters, the Saudis responded with retaliatory strikes against the Iraqi militias. For Iran, however, attacking the Gulf was a way to increase the pressure from its greatest weapon, closing the Strait of Hormuz, and causing a rift within the US-Arab alliance. The factions at play in Iraq weren't limited to that, however. On May 9th, the Wall Street Journal reported that the Israeli military had set up a secret base on Iraqi territory, probably without Iraq's permission, which helped bring the Israeli Air Force closer to Iran. After local Iraqi shepherds saw, quote, abnormal military activity, the Iraqi military sent soldiers to investigate. The Israeli military, in response, launched airstrikes, killing one of them. The base likely helped the Israelis get closer to the battlefield and have an easier time launching attacks against Iran. As a result of the attacks launched by Iraqi militias, the United States in April cut off oil revenues to the country, probably to pressure Iraq under its new Prime Minister, Ali al-Zaidi, to do something about the militias. Al-Zaidi then in late June set a deadline of September 30th for Iraqi militias to disarm, and days later, the oil revenues resumed. But disarmament, however, is not so easy, and Iran, as shown by the visit of its foreign minister to Iraq, probably still has an important role to play. It essentially means getting a group of people with hard power to give up their hard power. The Iraqi people also matter in this equation. According to a Gallup poll, about 52% of Iraqi Shias approve of Iran, with Iran, in the eyes of Iraqis as a whole, having an approval rating similar to Saudi Arabia. And according to the same poll, the most important issues in their eyes were work and the economy. That poll was taken in 2025, but it's likely it still holds up. Like Lebanon, Iraq has many different players pulling at it, and whatever happens to it will probably be felt in all the countries that border it. These nations, of course, do include the Gulf states. These countries, on a political and strategic level, have seen some of the worst fallout from this conflict, and that is the next episode. So until then, thank you for watching.